Good evening, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. This is a little bit of an impromptu dissident dispatch, like a special dispatch, special edition, because I received this in the mail. I'm an alum. I went to this school, University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education. It is one of the Ivies, and it's an Ivy League teacher education school, graduate school. I got my master's there in 1990, and believe it or not, I've tried to remove myself from the mailing list multiple times across multiple addresses. And yet they still find me and they keep sending it. And I guess I should be glad, because this is how I know what's going on over there in one of the major institutions where our teachers are educated. So what I do now, because I'm a glutton for punishment, is I open it up, I start reading, and I say, what's going on over there? What are they talking about? What are their priorities? And I am here this evening, hopefully within 1 hour and only 1 hour, because I know you all have holiday plans to get to and so forth, to go through some of the key parts of this document with you, sort of page by page, and help you understand a little bit better how they think. Because it is why most teachers are leftists. It's how they're educated. Yes, a lot of the young ones who are just going in grew up going to woke elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools too. But it really gets driven home when they head off to grad school. And I hope to show you why. I want to go through it with you. I did post pictures on X, but going through it, I think will help, because you might read some of this and think, well, it's not that bad, is it? I mean, how bad is that? And I want to explain why, yes, it is actually that bad. So let's take a look. All right, there's the cover. I already showed it to you. The first thing you see is a letter from the dean. This dean is Catherine Strunk. She's only been there 1 year. What I'm going to do is go through and I'll read this to you. I'm not going to read all the other pages in their entirety, but this one I'm going to read. Dear alumni and friends, I can hardly, let me make it bigger so you can read along as well. Let's see. Ooh, it's a little big now. Okay. Dear alumni and friends, I can hardly believe it's been a year since I began my tenure as Dean of PennGSE. I'm thankful for the warm welcome I received from our incredible community of students and alumni, faculty and staff, partners and supporters. Pay attention to the word partners. It comes up a lot in this document. It's important for you to understand that major universities in general, but especially graduate schools of education, partner with schools, mostly public schools, sometimes neighboring private schools, but partnership means they are literally using the classrooms in these schools as labs for their student teaching, which you would expect, but also to test out some of their theories about teaching and about learning. And that is not always clearly understood by parents of the children in those schools, or they understand it, but they don't understand that using your child as a guinea pig for new ways of teaching it doesn't always have the best outcome, right? So you really need to understand what it means to let your child be a test subject. Okay. I'm also grateful for the time many of you have taken to share your hopes for the school and for the work we've already accomplished together in a short time. It would be pointless, however, to pretend that this year has been easy at Penn. I should say not. Or at any higher education institution. We have experienced deep unrest and pain. That's how they're characterizing what all of us have watched from home, the protests, some of the worst of which were on the Penn campus. Now, PennGSE is on the Penn campus in West Philadelphia. It is really not separate. It's right there. So what you saw going on with protests and rallies for, Hamas and so on, that was right where I went to school. Okay. So even though I was in the Graduate School of Education, you really would not have been able to avoid it if you were anywhere in the vicinity. So the deep and unrest and pain among many members of our Penn community, and we have worked here at GSE to ensure that all feel welcome, included, and valued. Through it all, we recognize that the work we do educating future teachers, counselors, leaders, researchers, and change makers is more important than ever. I can assure you, when I went to this school, there wasn't a lot of talk about change making. Certainly, they talked about teachers, counselors, leaders, and to a certain extent, researchers. But the change maker thing is a little bit new. That's new since I graduated. PennGSE has a more than 100-year legacy of excellence in producing inspirational educators and vanguard research. So think about what the word vanguard means, right? I don't necessarily think when I'm trying to teach children that I want vanguard research. I want research that points to effective teaching methodology, instructional design, things like that. I don't know that I need to be at the bleeding edge. Okay. It's a personal preference. I just want to call your attention to word choice. They're very proud of this. And when I think about how we can continue that tradition while tackling the most pressing challenges of our day, I keep coming back to these 4 key areas for action. Again, they're supposed to be teaching educators, counselors, leaders, etc., tackling the most pressing challenges of our day. It's hard to know. Does she mean in teaching, in educating, or in general? Do they see themselves as change makers fixing the world in general through education? I would suggest to you it's the latter. But since I don't know her personally, I can't say for sure. It's an interpretation. You be the judge. So here are the 4 key areas for action. Not consideration, not thought, action. Number 1, expand our engagement with our local, regional, national, and global communities. We can start local. How nice. Philadelphia is more than just our home, it is our partner. While PennGSE is already facilitating partnerships with hundreds of schools and communities across the city, I want to advance this work via collaborative research initiatives with the school district. So that would be Philadelphia. Similarly, we already work with and for communities throughout the Commonwealth. I have had Alexis on this channel to talk about what goes on in Haverford. That's also in Pennsylvania. And that is an interesting show. You should consider watching that. But I am eager to grow these collaborations that serve Pennsylvania students and educators. Again, I hope those communities speak to Alexis about how that's working out. Number 2, supercharge the educator pipeline. This really jumped out at me. You hear often there's a teacher shortage. A cornerstone of our work has always been nurturing the next generation of teachers and school leaders, and that work has never been more crucial. Good teachers are one of the most critical components of student success. Who would disagree with that? And they go on to become the next crop of effective principals and superintendents. By supporting and strengthening the pipeline of educators through scholarships, professional development, and more, we will invest in those who will invest in our children. So on the surface, it seems like, what's wrong with this? Nothing. We need to help bring more teachers into the profession. However, I would love to hear something about retention. What is getting lost in all the conversation about teacher shortages is why so many teachers who go in leave, and they leave quickly. And part of why they leave quickly is because some of the challenges that they really don't discuss in grad ed at all, and they certainly don't empower the teachers on the outside to deal with, are things like classroom management and discipline. Just not allowed, right? Restorative justice, that's all you've got pretty much. All of the new responsibilities with regard to mental health and all these other, things that teachers are supposed to be doing that make the job a much bigger job than teaching kids. And it becomes more like government functionary herding cats and making sure everybody's in compliance with a bunch of agendas that contradict each other. So people leave, and supercharging the pipeline is not really going to work if it just becomes a meat grinder and you're just throwing people in there without tackling the net negative of some of the theories y'all have been pushing for 50 years, the critical theories and so on that are making the schools like Lord of the Flies. It's not just that we need to prepare these teachers and get more teachers in there. We need to figure out what have we done wrong because it's not working. And if you are at the vanguard and you have a 100-year tradition of educating teachers, you really need to take some responsibility for that. That's Deb's opinion. Embrace hard conversations, starting with this one. I would say this would be a good one to start. Why are teachers leaving? Education is the bedrock of informed citizenship. Not this kind. Being educated is the bedrock of an informed life. Not sure what informed citizenship is. It's, seems to change shape, but since 1836, it's been roughly compliant little serf. Critical thinking and civil discourse, as defined by them, I'm sure. Citizens of tomorrow. Citizens? Okay. Need to know how to conduct discussions around difference. I can't shake the feeling that they mean need to know how to do it the way we want them to do it. Around the differences. Right? Okay, you sit down. We're going to talk around you because you don't agree with us. So we're going to go talk to the people who do agree with us around you. That's usually how it happens. It's how it happens in the classroom at Penn. And I would imagine that's how it happens in classrooms around the country. And it's how it happens in boardrooms and school board meetings and your workplace, most likely. So you need to learn how to talk around people who disagree with you. Because, of course, you're right, because you're the expert, because you were Penn educated. And even if you come out of Penn, as I did, and you disagree with people there, well, then I guess you just failed. You're broken. You're a bad penny. That's what you are. Our faculty are uniquely primed to help nurture these skills and champion education as foundational to democracy. Is it, though? Is it foundational to democracy or foundational to indoctrinate people to all want to be socialists? That's what it seems like. Spur education innovation. Technology is evolving at breakneck speed. We must embrace radical new ways of teaching and learning. Why? Why must we? Why must we embrace them? Just because they're there doesn't mean we must embrace them. How about we must consider them? We must learn the pros and cons. We must understand them. Rushing in to embrace something that is evolving at breakneck speed could get you eaten. You don't know. Is it predator? Is it friend? What is it? You don't know because it's evolving at breakneck speed. So maybe stop a little short of embracing it and consider it. Just a suggestion. Developing pedagogy that harnesses the power of AI. No, please don't. Virtual reality. Oh, dear God. And ed tech tools. No, to unlock previously unimaginable experiences and redefine what's possible for the future of education. How about for the future of your students? And why they don't really want that redefined they want to know that when they go to school or they go to learn, that they will learn what they need to be able to adapt to things as they're changing that you can't possibly predict in their individual lives. They don't go to school to have unimaginable experiences that redefine the nature of this amusement park experience known as school. That's not what it's for. I'm inspired by these possibilities. I hope you are too. I'm terrified, actually, but okay. They build off work PennGSE is already doing. I hope will help us write the next chapter for our school, our communities, and our field. Your feedback is important to me, etc. Okay, so that's the letter and my saucy little interpretation of it. Your mileage may vary. That's what I think. So I'm going to quickly jump over here. I've got some hello to. First of all, hi, Rodney. Hello, Deb Philman. I and many others really appreciate what you do, exposing the infiltration of the woke mind virus into the education system. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Hi, Ego Brain. Headbutts for Phatic Communion says, I've been teaching 10 years. I could give you gossip. Most teachers are leftist pedos. You're not surprising me at all. I bet the gossip would be unsurprising as well. Not that I wouldn't be interested, just saying. Hi, Aaron. Here in Canada, teacher licensing is only attainable through practicum experiences. There is no qualifying exam, unlike in Asia. that is interesting. I wasn't aware how it works in Asia. I sort of understood how it works in Canada, which is similar to here. Although we do have, or did, when I went to Penn, we had both a full year of practicum where you had to be in the classroom for an entire year. And during that year, you had 2 weeks where you completely took over the classroom and ran it like you were the lead teacher. But the rest of the year, you were in the classroom, you were paired with the school. That was the partnership aspect. And then you had an exam at the end. And the exam consisted of an oral and a written exam. That's for the school. And then we also had to take our licensure exam, which is with the state. We did not learn at the time. We did not have any instruction in the classroom on policies and procedures, et cetera. So I didn't do very well on that. I got my certificate, but I didn't do that well on that exam. I did extremely well on my pen exam and oral exam, but we did have something. All right. And hi there, Mac. Good to see you. Intriguing. Yes, it is very intriguing. All right. So then moving on, I thought we'd just take a quick look at what are the faculty reading? What's on their bookshelf? Methods for, let's make it bigger. Okay. Methods for community-based research advancing educational justice and epistemic rights. I probably should have looked that up before we started the show, like on Amazon or something, but the title alone gives me the heebie-jeebies. Community-based research partnership. This is, we're going to study the kids while they're trying to learn. Probably we're just studying people in their communities. And then advancing educational justice. Is it unjust? The only thing I can see that's unjust is it's compulsory and there's no free speech and there's a lot of bullying by the teachers of the kids and their parents. That seems deeply unjust, but I don't think that's what they mean. And epistemic rights. Can we just have a consistent epistemology? Just pick one or no? Do we all have a right to our own epistemology? Is that what it is now? Can we just have a school full of people with unique, my epistemology is this. Well, mine is this. Well, I identify as this type of, just curious, like what are epistemic rights? How about epistemic humility? Can we start there? All right, here, the interprofessional healthcare team. Health leadership and development, don't know what that is. Burnout immunity, how emotional intelligence, I don't know how many times I have to say this, emotional intelligence has been debunked as a thing. You're intelligent or you're not. And you're either emotionally mature or you're not. Emotional intelligence is sort of a term that they apply to, like, some people have better social skills than others, but what I see happening is people are trying to take shy people on the spectrum whose social skills are a little different, and turn it into a kind of lack of intelligence, almost like a low IQ, but low EQ. If you are very direct and you don't tippy-toe around everything and you don't couch everything and, all kinds of euphemisms and niceties and fake politeness, then you're deemed not very high on your EQ. You don't have high emotional intelligence. But what happened to boundaries? Right? So I don't like this term emotional intelligence, how it can help you build resilience and heal from work. Work is now a sickness, guys. Core practices in teacher education, a global perspective. Remember, different ways of knowing. Mhm. Developing expert principles, professional learning that matters. Okay, that seems pretty benign. Then we're moving on to the news briefs. All right. Let's see real quick. I'm going to jump back over here. Horse Foot Trot says, I'm teaching in Cambodia, 7 years, just finished a year teaching IB, PYP, and a traditional curriculum. The PYP, in my opinion, was garbage. My students in a teacher-led curriculum learned well with better skills. This is what I hear from everyone, and it's what my personal experience is. They tried to push me into things where, the student led or it was just experiential, whatever. The kids were lost. And when I instructed and then, guided them and then instructed them and then, yeah, much better. And then Max is epistemologist, studied the nature, origin, and scope of knowledge, epistemic justification, the rationality of belief, and various related issues. Thank you for the definition for those who weren't quite sure. I suppose they want to reimagine precisely. I'm sorry, I should have defined it. I guess I forgot. Not everybody knows exactly what epistemology is. But yes, you're exactly right. They do want to reimagine, redefine knowledge itself. First of all, it's not objective, right? A man can be a woman because we say so. So forget biology, forget observational, like your ability to see what is. You didn't see that Joe Biden screwed up that debate. No, what are you talking about? He was fine. Okay. So even things like that are, it's gaslighting on a mass scale. They do want to redefine knowledge. And Manalula says most teachers are pedos. Oh, no, they may be dumb. They may be ideologically misguided, but they're not pedos. I'm a teacher. I don't see that. Where do you work? Okay. Yeah, I was sort of half joking. Not most are not, but there are too many. And most schools don't do a good job of identifying them and or getting rid of them when they do find them. That is known. My state alone, the number of reports of sexual abuse in the schools, it's off the charts from the teachers, not kid on kid. Okay, so getting back to the news briefs, this kind of blew my mind. It caught my eye. McGraw Center Symposium encourages education leaders to embrace politics. Guys, tell me what you think, but no, thank you. In your personal life, knock yourself out. It's America. Do what you want. But when I was at Penn in 1990, they were already too political. They were already saying teaching is a political act. And I rejected that. And I thought I could reject it. And I know when I went to teach in schools and found it was not just unique to my school, it was everywhere. The path of an education leader today is fraught with political potholes, and it shouldn't be, and it wouldn't be if the government weren't involved. But a leader's best strategy for avoiding those potential dangers is to embrace politics. No, 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 no. A leader's best strategy is to lead and to say, we're here to educate the young. And if we have to do it in an agency or a department or a school paid for with tax dollars, all the more reason we are the last line of defense against the state using us as tools of its power. So we must reject that in our classrooms. We must push back. We must keep a wall of separation, just like you would with the church, right? We all seem to understand that no, do not embrace religion because there are religious belief potholes that might affect your teaching. No, there's a wall. You don't bring that into the classroom because you have to guard against over influence steering the kids who aren't your kids. No, embrace it. Embrace it now. So thank you for letting us know that we parents cannot trust you at all. And by the way, you've just disenfranchised everyone who disagrees with you when you have our children in your care. This was the theme of the Leading the Way symposium held by the McGraw Center for Educational Leadership. Political issues dominate news coverage of education, and the career longevity of education leaders, especially school district superintendents, is dwindling. Can't imagine why. Blah, blah, blah. It is politics that takes people out, and a lot of that is self-inflicted. Logan said, our intent with this symposium is to give education leaders the tools to navigate the political challenges better and ultimately improve the education experience for students. So for the symposium, she identified 9 skills for strategic political leadership to help attendees traverse the challenges of the hyper-political landscape in education. Get ready to take notes, parents. I think you might want to know about some of these. Know your organization's political history and leverage it strategically. What? If you're a superintendent of a school, what is your organization? I'll just let you sit with that one for a moment. Enhance your team's political leadership skills. Again, what? Why? What? Know when to decline an idea, project, initiative, or even a job. Well, that's any leader needs to do that. Identify your allies and empower them effectively. Wonderful. And if somebody isn't your ally because they disagree with your political point of view here and how you want to leverage your organization's political history, then what? Are they your enemy? They're not your colleague anymore? Stay focused on your North Star and minimize distractions. Well, people are doing that very, very well. Distraction. Parent is complaining that there's porn in the library. Let's minimize that. No more parents allowed in the school building. I mean, are we getting down to that level? Work closely with naysayers and get comfortable with opposing views. But you just said stay focused on your North Star and minimize distractions. People who are not comfortable with your views and your political strategy are not going to stop. The same would be true if it were the flip. If you had very, very left wing woke people pushing on a very conservative school, they're not going to just give up. If it's a public school, especially, they're not going to stop. They have as much right to express themselves and be a naysayer. And what does get comfortable with opposing views look like? Get comfortable ignoring them? Build political capital both inside and outside your organization. Again, to what end? What does political capital look like when you're a school principal or superintendent? Avoid unnecessary conflicts and don't pick a fight with a porcupine. Are we talking about parents again? Engage in effective communication management. I'm keenly aware that in my position, politics is always at play. It shouldn't be, you guys. That's the whole point. That's what Van Harvey and I were talking about the other night. That this has to even be written tells you there's too much power and too much money in education. That this has to even be discussed. Okay? So that's that. This is a whole section on student homelessness. Interestingly enough, they call it student homelessness. And then within the body of the article, they talk about unhoused students. So they seem to go back and forth. Like we're moving people away from homelessness to unhoused students, back and forth and back and forth. And so I'm not going to go into this in detail. There's, apparently the nation reported 7,200 unhoused students, more than during the year when Hurricane Harvey devastated the city. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The Houston district, not the nation. The Houston district reported that. But what is going on down on the southern border? What's happening down there with people? Do you think maybe there's a problem with unhoused students because we have undocumented people? Are we allowed to talk about that? Or do we have to just accept this problem and deal with this problem and worry about this problem without ever having a conversation about how man-made it is? So that's what struck me about this one. Okay, I'm gonna quiz you. Read the title of this article, Reconnecting with Their Roots. One person. So you know what's going on here. Okay? They are an Ecuadorian and American. They are Kurami, a word in the indigenous Quechan language of the Andes used to describe a third gender that embodies both male and female. They are an artist and a social scientist. Okay, so here's what's happening. I don't know if this art is great, if this person is awesome. This could be a great person. This could be great art. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Here's what I do know. University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education is throwing down the gauntlet and saying, we recognize this is real. This is a way of knowing about gender that is totally, we're going to use it. We're going to put it front and center. We're going to put this person front and center in our bulletin. We're going to feature as a social scientist, published poet, researcher, and at nonpartisan data science organization NORC at the University of Chicago, straddling the line of the subjective and the objective. Straddling the line. My creative work I see as a different type of research, says Colo. Poetry I see as internal research. They have published 3 poetry collections, et cetera, et cetera. 2019's Self Sir, 2021's Faith Fee, and the latest Hampy, excavating different parts of their identity. This is all identity stuff. So if they're elevating this to the alumni profile, this is an alum. Okay, they're elevating the profile. They're talking about it. They're taking it as like not just this person's opinion, but like here it is. Yep, this is totally fine. They are telling you, we agree with this. We agree with all of these views and beliefs. They're not platforming an alum who just wrote a book about their faith in Christianity, Judaism, their devotion to reality and science. No, they're putting forth somebody who says they're a third gender and is straddling the line of the subjective and objective. So Yeah. Okay. Moving back over very quickly to the comments. Um, do, 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 do. Horace Foottrot says student-led inquiry learning needs the students to have the basic fundamentals, also require them to be somewhat advanced at the core skills. 100% agree. Also, not really happy with the database. Yeah, I've talked about that on the channel all the time. If you're not familiar with the work on the channel, we talk a lot about data mining. Mac Thompson says 1984 strikes again. Yes. Aaron says, Manalula, I think what it is that teachers have to be genuinely interested in kids. That interest isn't necessarily sexual. True. But Aaron, what we're seeing in schools is almost an overemphasis on empathy with the students and telling teachers you can't teach them until you have a personal relationship with them, which is a little creepy. Even if there's no sexual stuff to it, it's still a boundary violation. It's still straddling the line between professional and unprofessional, between adult and child. There can be some transference, there can be some enmeshment. It's not a good idea. These kids have parents. And if they don't have parents or there's problems there, then that's what school counselors are supposed to be for. The teacher needs to have a little bit of that distance. Again, my opinion, take it or leave it, but I'm noticing some kids get very, very confused about who's the source of knowledge and correction in their life, their parents or their teacher. And a lot of kids are saying, shut up, mom and dad, you don't know. My teacher is the I Ching, is everything, knows everything. That's just not true. Max says that's tribe teachers need to teach in an unbiased manner. They are there to teach the fundamentals. Yeah, I tend to agree. Or at a minimum, if they're going to express a bias, make it crystal clear it is a bias and why it's a bias. And that with older children, obviously. Horace Foottrot, Mac, I tend to agree. If my students know my political leanings, I consider a fail. Same. And yet now kids know they know their teacher's sexuality. Manalula says, Aaron, sorry, I'm confused. Interest in kids is equal to sexual interest. If you don't care about kids, what are you doing as a teacher? Yeah, see, that's another thing. Is like one would hope it's a given that they do care. Texas Sheep Lady says, when teachers are change agents, it's time to close the government schools. It's been time to do that for a very, very long time. It really has been. When somebody decided the schools themselves were in the business of social engineering, which goes all the way back to Horace Mann, it was time to close them. And the parents of Massachusetts figured that out and tried to get it closed, tried to stop it, and they failed. And here we are, all of us. Mac Townsend says, know your political history and leverage it strategically. Wow, I wonder how long before all schools will have a Marxist youth club right along with Glee, chess, and yearbook. That's already happening. The stinks of the CP. Yep, agreed. Aaron says, man, Lily, you're saying what I mean. I guess I should have worded as being interested in kids doesn't have it. Yes, that is true. You can take an interest, as sort of a dispassionate, detached interest that's still friendly, is still personable, but there is a line. And I think we all know what it is. I think there are people being obtuse. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's how you would speak to someone else's child if you saw them out in the wild. Never met that kid. You're not going to spend a ton of time with that kid. How would you speak to them? Well, speak to your students the same way. You don't really need to be any nicer than that. Okay. And then Max is illegal, set loose, homeless in most cases. Yes, once they're not taken care of, if they don't have anywhere to go or they don't like their accommodations, then they are unhoused, and that is a fact. And then Mackles says this article is a spin on the two-spirit thing. I believe so. Okay, so moving on, I saw this homeroom, our alums in their spaces. Now, I'll show you very quickly, and then I'll come back to this. The next one after this has this picture, but we'll come back to it. When I saw this spread, I was taken aback. I felt like, am I reading like one of those, fashion magazines? Where they talk about, this is what I have in my purse, or this is my boudoir, or this is my bathroom setup, or look at my living room, or whatever. There's something both narcissistic and exhibitionist about it. And it just seems weird to have it in our alums in their spaces. This person's a professor, researcher, and entrepreneur. That's a lot of things, but okay. She's from a class of 22. Lauren Goodwin has never fit the mold, not as a first generation college student from rural Pennsylvania who went on to earn advanced degrees at Columbia and Penn, not as the only female in engineering. Hang on a second. Cybersecurity and technology roles in high hazard environments in the energy and space industries, not even as a member of a cohort at PennGSE's Executive Doctorate in Higher Education and Management program, where as the Chief Information Officer for NASA, she stood out in a room full of longtime educators and administrators. So, like, all of this is great, right? So she's talking about, her career and all that. Super. And we're learning about her as far as, her career. What are alumni doing? This is actually interesting. What my issue was is the spread. It's just like, go look at her room and then it feels strange to me. I don't know, maybe I'm just being a nitpicker. So we have launch photos. As my children have always been part of my career. These pictures represent two of the launch vehicles we have seen together. Da, 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 da. South African mask. And then we talk about, talks about the mask. First of all, we should know that this entire setup is contrived. I doubt this is how her actual office looks. Let's take another look at it. This is a photo shoot. That's not her actual office. They said, bring a bunch of stuff. Or if it is, they've sort of shoved some things. Nobody works in the office like that. That's not somebody's working space. They just said, bring what's really important to you that you have in your office and we're going to showcase it. And that's fine, but it's not actually real. It's staged. And that's the part that feels weird to me. It's like we're pulling out things. It's almost like name dropping, but in visual form. I went here and I did this, and I did that, and I did the other, and I have done these amazing things. And all of that that story can be told taking pictures of her in her actual office. First of all, doesn't need to do this high fashion shoot with, might I add, $700 shoes on her feet. I mean, those may be her actual shoes, and that's fine. I'm not trying to judge or be some kind of snob. It's just, there just is something very contrived and, how do I put this? I'm not saying she's a narcissist. She's probably not. But what I'm saying is there's something narcissistic about it, that like what you strive for are all of the artifacts of this success, not the actual success. The artifacts are front and center. They're arranged in an artistic format. It's like, look at my diploma and my graduation hat and look at this and look at that and look at the other. It feels very Instagrammy and more about having the things and getting the things and checking the boxes. I'm actually curious to know more about what she did and the challenges she overcame. Even when you read through it, it's like, I did this and I did that and I did the other and I got this and I got that and I got the other. And it doesn't feel attainable. And I would have imagined that the point of this magazine and the point of showcasing this is to show, like, look what can be done for graduates of our program. But this feels unattainable to the average person. And I don't mean aspirationally unattainable. I mean unattainable. It's like looking at a supermodel with their fancy car and fancy mansion and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't feel like a girl from rural Pennsylvania another one can repeat this because of the visuals. That's Deb's take. Perhaps you disagree, and that's totally fine. I just feel I looked at this and my visceral reaction was not, I feel really good to be in good company having gone to the school. It was more like, what a loser I am next to this person. And I don't think that's how you want your alums to feel. She is obviously very accomplished, not to take anything away from her. She's extraordinarily accomplished. I would just rather celebrate her accomplishments than be put in a position of where I feel like the person who took this picture wants me to envy her. Does that make sense? Or am I talking crazy? So yeah, it's a little too much. It's a little overwhelming. But okay. So then these are just some things that they were celebrating. Spotlight in school funding. They're talking about, getting money, graduating the next generation, leaders guiding leaders. Most of what I noticed in this stuff was heavily focused again on, public education, getting money into it, building people up to be, change makers, that kind of stuff. So they're telling you, We celebrate that which is, bringing money into the system, keeping the system alive, and doing things differently than they have been done. That's what they celebrate, being that vanguard thing. Now I want to get to this. This is really, really important. But let me quick see if you guys agree with me or if you thought I was nuts, because I'm kind of curious now. All right. So I think I don't know if Mona Lulu is agreeing. Oh, she says those red bottom shoes. Yeah, those are the Christian Louboutin. Horace Fisher, yes, caring but discipline structure. But okay, that was about the teaching. Shelley says fairy tales. Mona Lulu says that's the expectation. You have to be fabulous. That's what it made me feel. This photo reminds me, Erin says this photo reminds me of teachers with Pinterest graded classrooms. It's unattainable. It can make people feel insecure about their own teaching practice. Absolutely. Or their own accomplishments, or, you could be the best teacher ever who's, making a huge difference in children's lives. And your office looks like a bomb went off in there. It's at your little home or apartment, and there's books and papers everywhere, whatever. And you're certainly not wearing fancy shoes. But remember, she's been at NASA. She graduated grad ed only in the sense that she got her doctorate in leadership. But all her other degrees below that had nothing to do with education. She was doing cybersecurity and all this other stuff. So I almost feel like they went out on a search for who's the most high-powered, impressive graduate of our school. And let's put them in the spread. I would love to see them do a spread of somebody who's just like, lowly teacher, been doing it for 50 years, gets handmade cards from the students on her birthday, and nobody knows her name except her students. She's never had another job. Just loves it. Loves it. There was a woman I worked with in Philadelphia when I was there, was a kindergarten teacher. She's probably passed at this point because she was in her 60s at the time. I mean, she could still be alive, but that woman gave everything to those kids. It was in West Philly, 100% minority school. And she was going to the thrift stores and buying coats for them for the winter out of her own pocket. She had boxes of food and snacks and things because kids would come in with no food. And this is before everybody had a free lunch. I mean, they did have free lunch, but even then the kids would have not eaten breakfast or dinner the night before. And she personally took care of it without making them feel bad. She taught them to brush their teeth if they didn't know how. She taught them to tie their shoes, but they didn't know how. This is kindergarten. And without being too motherly, if that makes sense, she still, even with the parents who weren't either able or doing the job, able to do the job or doing the job, she never made the parents feel small, and she didn't talk to the kids like, I'm your new mommy now. She just took care of them. What needs to be taken care of, I take care of it. That woman to me was like, you should be celebrated. And I guarantee you there are people out there like that to this day. Yeah, Horse says fabulous. I'd rather be effective. It's not my students. I'm their teacher. I agree. Absolutely. And Mel Lewis says it's part of the Danielson evaluation environment. Oh, okay. Maybe. All right. So critical cultivation of media literacy. Notice everything now has the word the critical or critical in front of it. There's a reason for that. All right. So this is a big deal. I did a show with Courage is a Habit about media literacy. And if you are thinking it is an effort to teach kids to reject independent journalism, alternative sources that are not mainstream networks on television and things like that, or that, don't agree with the state's point of view, you would be correct. So they're going through and talking about, why this is so important. And one of the things that jumped out at me was we have the youngest reporters in the country, said health journalist Marian Ullman, who started the organization in 2003 along with second grade teacher. Ullman said that this school year, Healthy Newsworks expects its newspapers will reach more than 6,000 students in under-resourced public, private, and parochial schools. Blitzstein and other teachers are currently working in 18 schools, helping students prepare newspapers that cover topics ranging from interviews with health professionals to public health issues and their own personal health experiences. And they're teaching research and journalistic skills in the process. You notice a heavy emphasis on health on the heels of all the COVID stuff? Well, what happened when it was finally safe again to print and you could get it out on social media, the truth about certain treatments for certain illnesses and the truth about the protocols in the hospitals that were, don't print that, can't talk about, can't interview that person, can't, if you interview that person, you're canceled, you're gone. You can't even, your career in journalism is over because you are spreading misinformation. How many videos from this very platform got taken down because people were asking questions? And suddenly, media literacy is focusing so very heavily on health. I don't, just saying. The working definition of the term media literacy established at a watershed 1992 conference at the Aspen Institute. By the way, extremely far left group. Go look it up, Aspen Institute. I'll have to do a show one day just on Aspen Institute. So 1992, quite a while ago, outside Washington, D.C. is the ability of a citizen to access, analyze, and produce information for specific outcomes. That's media literacy. But it was the 2016 presidential campaign that brought phrases such as fake news and alternative facts widely into the public sphere, Nichols said, accompanied by increased polarization among news consumers and a flood of dubious information online. Dubious equals doesn't agree with Democrats. I think we all know that by now. The gaslighting is off the charts. They just will never give up on the idea that their news is real news. MSNBC, PBS, NPR, CNN, Trevor Noah, The Daily Show, John Oliver, et cetera. That's real news, if somewhat comedic sometimes. But everybody else, that's misinformation. And that's what they want you to believe, and they want to teach our kids. So then, they show how they're working with little kids. A screenshot from Healthy News Network's award-winning student-made documentary, How We Heal. Anyone else creeped out by this? Because I am. I'm teaching them to consider authorship, she said. Who's paying for the message and what is their agenda? She's right. Except what they're probably going to do is say someone rich paid for it, or somebody white paid for it, or somebody Christian paid for it. But when it's paid for by an NGO or the federal government or the state government, well, that's totally fine. Of course, that's fine. NPR, that's unbiased. It's not rich people. It's not the Koch brothers, right? So that's what they're probably talking about. Gail borrows metaphor from The Wizard of Oz. They don't know who's behind the curtain, whose voices are being highlighted, or how people massage the truth, how people produce an ad want you to interpret it. Again, if I thought that they meant this, that they really meant it, I would be heartened. I would say, okay, maybe that's good. I don't for a single second believe this is projection, 100% projection. They have no intention of applying the same analysis to the sources they're going to use for media literacy instruction. And I know this because I've seen which sources they choose in the curriculum that is pushed out through the Department of Education. And it's NPR, MSNBC, CNN, et cetera. Those are the trustworthy sources. So I don't buy it. It's all a bunch of crap. But I'm sure parents and others, alumni, donors will read this and go, this is so good. Is it though? And then this just goes into, again, healthy habits start young. Who would dispute that? But do you really want the state or its agents teaching your kids what healthy habits are? Eat the bugs. Definitely eat the bugs, kids. That's a healthy habit. And here, this caught my eye, of course. Oops. Wait a minute. I want to move this. Why can I not? Oh, here we go. I just wanted to highlight the media literacy through legislation side. You know how the left loves to get all ornery when politicians want to, ban certain things from school, and then, how dare you? And then they want to force something in. They typically force curriculum in, whereas Republicans have a tendency, more often than not, to try to ban things and get them out. They're both wrong, but this is worse, in my opinion. forcing something into the curriculum when you are a politician or you're 10 steps removed from the actual classroom and not letting the teacher, decide how to teach a certain thing, or, make sure the kids know how to read, write, and do math before you add extra stuff, is akin to the government and coming in and telling a doctor how to treat the patient. It's a bad idea. So here we have this. People on both sides of the aisle complain about bias and misinformation in the media. That is true. But Congress hasn't passed any national media literacy education legislation, thank God, to help citizens become better informed. I don't want the government telling me how to become better informed. Can you think of a bigger conflict of interest than legislation aimed at teaching my kids how to be better informed, mandated by the government? Does the government really want me to know what's going on in the government? No, it does not. Never has, never will. Yuck. Okay? But they're, for lack of a better term, shit shining it. I'm not going to go into this too much because I'm running out of time, but I will say that this particular person they're talking about, Marcus Foster, educator, Oakland Unified School District, the thing that jumped out at me about the story about him is they talk about how he was, his life was cut short. Here it says, who's first Black superintendent of a major urban school district in the US, whose life was tragically cut short by bullets from an extremist gun. Okay. So you're left to wonder, oh no, we got to focus on bullets from an extremist gun. If you think that's by accident, you're wrong. Just say he was assassinated, he was murdered, he was, cut down in the prime of his life. His life was tragically cut short by an assassin, by a murderer, by a gunman even. I mean, yeah, I could say gunman, but bullets from a gun. And it's an extremist gun. And then they don't tell you what kind of extremists. You have to go and look. And where is that information? It's not there. Why isn't it there? I got to keep looking. I've got to go through the whole article and go down to it's all the way at the end in the last paragraph. What does it say? Tragically, Foster was murdered, leaving a school board meeting by members of extremist group, the Symbionese Liberation Army. Far left wing organization that has liberation in the name. Well, we can't very well write a whole magazine that includes things like equity and so forth. That, by the way, in the story, even it talks about equity and liberation, and then mention that it was a far left extreme organization that killed him. They'd probably like you to imagine it was some white supremacist. Nope, one of your own. Just saying. And then the last thing real quick I'm going to tell you about is they published this 6 tips for explaining war to children. In an ever-changing world, let me make this bigger, sorry. In an ever-changing world, parents and educators are too often faced with explaining complex and challenging events to children. Are we, though? I mean, we're faced with these events happening. Children ask questions about these events. These 2 statements are true. Challenging, war happens. Our kids probably hear about it and ask questions. Everything after that is an opinion. Whether we are on the hook to explain all of this to our children depends dramatically on their age, on what questions they've asked, on our proximity to the conflict. Do we have a family member fighting in it? Are we engaged in some kind of war situation, or are we even a policymaker? Are we talking about it constantly around the house? Or is it thousands of miles away? It doesn't touch us at all, has nothing to do with us whatsoever. And the only time the kid might hear about it is if news is on the background. Unless other kids or other adults are shoving it in their face, as seems to be the case lately these days. So, navigating those conversations is hard, but not impossible, says clinical psychologist Marcia Richardson, senior lecturer and director of PennGSE's School and Mental Health Counseling Program. Oh, I bet that's a fun one. An expert in child and adolescent development who has been instrumental in developing and overseeing school-based mental health programs. Richardson explains that adults must help bridge the gap, offering support and understanding as school-age children navigate and process world events in a healthy and constructive way. So much gobbledygook there. They must bridge the gap. What's the gap? The kids understanding, like from what they know and they don't know? Why? Why must they? What happened to there's nothing for you to worry about. You're perfectly safe. It's far away and it's not going to come here and you're absolutely fine and the grown-ups are taking care of it for very young kids. What why do you need to go deeper than that? And then for slightly older kids, you can say a modified version of that. I just reject the notion that we have to talk about all the adult problems all the time with the children just because it's happening. That we need to sort of make sure they understand everything that's going on. I got news for you. They don't want to know. I have a teenager. I have a teenager who even has like a personal reason to be particularly interested in what goes on in the Middle East, and she still would rather not. They have enough to worry about. They have enough anxiety. They have enough things going on. The last thing they need is to be brought in on all of, let's talk about it. What if they don't want, how do you know they want to? Or if there's 3 or 4 who want to, set aside time and talk to them. But also teach them to respect the wishes and boundaries of those who are like, I don't want to know. I'm 13, I'm 16. It's not for me to know. I don't want to see footage. Stop sending me videos. I don't want to have anything to do with this. This is scary and I'm not really ready to process this. People are at different emotional stages or they have things going on at home. I can't worry about all the things all the time. And so, take time. This one killed me. Take time to reflect on your emotional state and your political, moral, and religious views. Take time to reflect on that. I certainly hope you do this at home. Consider that these will influence how you respond to the situation, conversation, and questions a child might have, which is exactly why, no matter how hard you try, to keep it under wraps, you probably shouldn't talk about it because this will be very hard to do. Imagine a Jewish teacher, I'm in a classroom, let's say with middle schoolers, and they want to talk about what evil, horrible people Israelis are, and they want to talk to me about it. Now, I can spend hours with myself in deep contemplation and self-reflection, meditating on how to be calm and quiet and not go off on some teenage kid who's, saying these things when I know they're not true, first of all, and so on. Or I could be the mature person who deserved to have the job in the first place, go in and say, this is a very complex situation. You're a very young person. It's not really part of what we're doing today in class. Maybe we'll find some time later in the week or whatever to talk about some of the issues. But at this time, we're not going to talk about this issue. And I think to be respectful of people here who may not agree with you, it would be better if you take it down a notch with the way you're talking. Okay? So let's do that. I would just end it, put the kibosh on it. Not, okay, Dad, be calm and be nice and understand that this child hates Jews and you need to accept that. And then you need to, no, I don't need to accept jack shit. Sorry, excuse my language. I need to teach. I need to get on with my day. You're either a professional or you're what? In therapy? Like, what is this? Okay, great. Keep the child's age in mind. Yes, that's a good idea. Consider limiting news consumption. This is for parents. I hope that goes without saying. Okay. Get out in front of misinformation and biases. Of course. No. Get out in front of them? Who decides? Who decides? Now, you can respond to this. If a student says all Russians are bad, you can do what I said to say, hey, we don't talk about people in all, always, never, none, that we just don't, it rarely adds up like that. So let's not do that. Okay. Till we know more about it. And that's not what we're doing here today in this class. If they're so desperate to know, schedule a time where you have time to plan something and so on. But this is like, be proactive, look for changes in behavior. Again, this is a given for parents and everybody else. So that's basically it. I just wanted to go through some of the more, salient parts and show you how these teachers are being, if this is the mindset of the Graduate School of Education, you can imagine what goes on in the school. I'll go through the last bit of the comments here. So Horse says, Horse Trout says, Aspen, I'd rather take examples from the Michaela Institute in England, but I'm Australian and I would agree with you there. And Lewis says, that's why they're the elites. Yes, it is. Max says, we were taught that in college 20 plus years ago, only credible sources were acceptable. The list consisted only of left sources. Fox, for example, is not considered. Yeah. Now, you can have conversations with students about how they chose their source and guide them there. But to say these sources are credible and these aren't, fun fact, all the sources, including CNN, are sometimes right and sometimes credible. It's just that there's no one source that definitely always is, and these are always not. So teaching them discernment would be a more important thing. I taught my son about propaganda. Something tells me they're probably not talking. No, they're not. Definitely not. Max says exactly. Ego only to prove Pravda will be acceptable. And then horses, haha, more Thomas Sowell, less government, I reckon. I would love that. I'd love to have a long conversation about that someday, but I can't seem to find anyone who wants to discuss it. I'll talk to you about Thomas Sowell. It's becoming such a triggery topic. Most folks don't want to think about it, which is a bad thing. And you're right. SJ, Chat GPT is not always right. In fact, it's very, very often wrong. So anyway, but I did promise that I would go have some BBQ with my husband. So I'm going to head off, but I just wanted to share this with you real quick and let you know what's going on in one of our elite institutions where they teach teachers how to be teachers. And if I get another bulletin, we can go through that one at that time. But this is pretty typical of what I see. This one just had a whole bunch of stuff in one. And I thought, all right, let's do it. Anyway, thank you so much. I want to wish everybody in my audience, whether you're, watching live or on the replay, a very happy, healthy Independence Day. Please take a moment to read the document aloud, maybe to your kids, aloud tomorrow morning or something. Talk through it with them, because I promise you that's not happening in school. And they should know what tomorrow's about and why. So there's that. And I just got a new comment. Mr. Bullish says, I always thought John Taylor Gatto's description of school as social conditioning center is interesting. The underground history, I have the book. I've read most of it, but not all of it. But I did do a series of videos called Dumbing Us Down, and it's his book. And I went through chapter by chapter and did some commentary, little videos for each chapter. So if you're interested, you can check that out. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend. And I will see you guys again on Monday. Take it easy.